Travis, can you please turn off the dinging that happens when I'm no longer the host, so I can't turn it off. Can you please turn off the dinging that happens when people come into a room?
Maybe.
Okay, thank you. Excellent.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the 12th Annual Center for the Digital Globe Symposium. The purpose of this is to give our students a Missouri method experience in both consulting and also in working here in the Missouri method. We've had excellent results with this. Many of the students that we consulted with are our former students, and they moved up the chain. And let me welcome our distinguished panel here will be judging today. Randy Peck, Executive Director of the Reynolds Journalism Institute, Kathy Kiley, the Lee Hills Chair in Free Press Studies, and Quentin Messenger, the CEO of Missouri Innovation Center. This class requires a couple of professors to help out, and we've had wonderful help today from Scott Christensen and Rob Jones, and I know Scott wants to say a few words, and so does Rob.
All right. Well, there's a lot of technology going on here today with Facebook streaming, Zooming, local, and all that. So we're going to try to make sure we're always talking into the microphones so that everybody can hear us appropriately. I am an associate teaching professor in a business school, and it has been my honor to be involved in this class and to be involved in the Center for the Digital Globe Certificate. I teach one of the required courses for that certificate. This is the other required course, and it has been not only an honor to be involved with the journalism school and with these other great professors, but also these great students. Not only my team, which you'll hear from in a little bit, but all these students in this class. So it's really been remarkable to watch them go through the phases of forming their teams and maybe a little storming now and then, a little bit of conflict from here and there, resolving that and moving forward to produce a great product. And so it really has been that Missouri method that the journalism school is so well known for. And so I'm just very happy to be here today.
Good to have you.
I echo everything that Scott just said. This is my fourth time being involved in the class. I was a student in the class, I was a TA for the class, I was a judge for the class, and now a professor. When Randy asked me to be one of the professors in the class, it was an immediately heck yes, because the class was so impactful for me as a student. So being able to work with students in the same way that Randy worked with me all those years ago has been super rewarding. Shout out to the Cranes team. Obviously, that's who I worked with. But the entire class has been just very strong. Randy, myself, and Scott had a little huddle either yesterday or the day before, and we sat back and thought, and honestly, this may be the strongest group that I have seen just as a collective. So that is a testament to the caliber of students that we have in this room today and online right now. And if this is any indication for the future of this class and the future of the workforce, then we're in really good shape. Y'all have been doing a phenomenal job this semester.
All right, thank you. Our first team is from AP, and I will let Akshat Sharma, the digital editor, senior digital editor from the Associated Press, introduce them.
Hi.
Are we having technical difficulty here?
I can't hear him right now.
Can you hear me now?
I
Yes.
sure can, yes.
Okay, great. Hi, so yes, my name is Akshat. I work at the AP, and this semester I had the pleasure of working with a great team at Missouri, the team that Randy Smith managed. The team did a wonderful job of, brainstorming some ideas, and I already know that this presentation is gonna be great, and the ideas that are going to be presented in this presentation are ones that I'm definitely going to take back to my team and try implementing in our organization. They asked great questions and they were fully engaged. So I'm sure just like myself, everyone else is going to find that this presentation is going to be very insightful and definitely something that, can be applied to the future and the evolution of the news industry as it keeps evolving.
Good morning. All right.
All right, looks like this is all working here. So, some quick introductions here. Our team, as Akshat mentioned, has been working with the Associated Press this semester. We've been tasked to research and find solutions to its data journalism project, data.world. But first, some introductions to our team. So, on this team, we have Emily Hood, myself, Kelly DeRook, Mike Richardson, and joining us on Zoom today is Anthony Hartnell and Kibet Chepyator. So we'd like to start off here with looking at the original problem statement as presented by the AP. When they first pitched this to us, they wanted to know how they can stand out from their competitors, as well as how AI or machine learning could be integrated into solving this problem. And the final point here, in line with the AP's core mission of helping local newsrooms improve their journalism, is how can the AP support these local newsrooms as they learn to use data, as well as enhance the user experience on the platform right now. So from all this, we were able to dilute it into one problem statement that we feel like encapsulates the entire problem, which is, as you see here, how can the Associated Press best help newsrooms incorporate data and data journalism into their stories? To find this, we did 7 in-depth interviews with newsrooms and journalists, and these were a mix of current, former, and potential clients. Additionally, we conducted market research and consulted with Akshat Weekly to learn a little bit more about the AP and about the data team and the roles and responsibilities that they take on, as well as the bandwidth they have for new projects. So we'd like to start here with taking a look at the current data.world product as it exists. As you can see, it houses 120 data sets. Everything is ordered alphabetically here. And as you go through, you have to scroll each page to see what data is available in there. So we're going to look at a quick example here, the Johns Hopkins data. This is a particularly good example of the data hosted because it does show these updates here and what they've done in each update, as well as an overview of the data, where it came from, a graphic which is not included on all of the data sets and we found to be a huge value add, as well as the caveats when using this data and the attribution when newsrooms want to use this information. So a quick look at the Excel sheets on here. We can see that this is something that a newsroom would need to have at least a working knowledge of Excel in order to integrate into their stories. If they don't, this could be rather daunting just looking at it here. So we thought it was important to look at some of the competition. First of all, on the open market, we found that there's about 312 firms that consider themselves data companies. This is a pretty crowded market, especially for the AP, whose primary product is journalism, and their data product is an offshoot of the great journalism that they do. So then we chose to look more at the competition within the industry, specifically ProPublica and its data store. They sell their data sets a la carte to newsrooms and the public that would find them interesting and relevant. Bloomberg Law also sells its data, but that is sold more to professionals in the legal field since that is their audience. These are both much more expensive than the AP's product. The AP charges $450 annually for this access to all 120 data sets. IRE used to sell their data sets, but currently they sell access to some of their award-winning and competition-winning stories to show kind of the process of how these data stories are created, so it helps newsrooms know where they should start if they want to do a similar project. The AP's product, as I said, is unique in comparison to all of these because of its low price and its access to all of its data. So From this research that we conducted, we found some initial problems for the AP itself. First of all, there's a soft revenue cap on data.world. The number of licenses is capped at 150 with the current model. That costs them about $30,000 annually to host these data sets on data.world. And with 150 licenses and the $450 cost, they have a maximum revenue potential of $67,500. Now, they are able to add additional users. However, each additional license over 150 is going to cost them $200 annually out of that $450 profit. And so it's still taking about half of the potential profit that they could be making here. Additionally, many of these data sets are old and haven't been updated as recently. Only 14% of those 120 data sets have been updated within the last year. Many newsrooms reported feeling that the frequency and the relevancy of these data sets was also not in line with what they needed for their newsroom. If their state or region wasn't represented, they would cancel their subscriptions. So now, in our research, we also found that there's some problems as reported by the newsrooms themselves, and these boil down specifically to a lack of time, money, and staff. There's not always the time and resources available to create data sets or find the data to make them, as well as to create infographics. Additionally, newsrooms have been shrinking over the past few decades, and journalists have to wear more hats within the organization, which means that there isn't always enough resources to hire more people focused specifically on creating data sets or infographics. So now I'm going to pass it off to Kibet, who's going to talk about our customer personas.
Thanks, Kelly. In regards to the customer persona, we are focused primarily on newsrooms and improving the value for them, rather than exploring other business clients. This was because it was going to be just a lot of work to build those relationships as opposed to just focusing on getting closer with companies in the news industry. We also wanted to ensure that we reached the whole market, so we decided to create 2 different personas to represent both large and small newsrooms. In the first customer persona here, we chose to target a large newsroom. In this persona, Robert Wilson is a data editor for the Miami Herald. He manages a team of 6 people and is looking for a way to increase efficiency among the group. He is looking to increase efficiency in regards to collecting data and information for new headlines. The team has the skills to analyze data and create visualizations, but lacks the time to find many data sets because they are too busy with other responsibilities. This is why he needs easily accessible data sets for daily news stories, so that they can capitalize on potential revenue. In the second customer persona here, we targeted a smaller newsroom. In this persona, Lauren Davis is a managing editor for the Springfield Daily Citizen. She manages a newsroom of 15 people and cares about making an impact in the Springfield community. This is by creating stories that can inspire the locals. The problems that she faces are that she lacks the staff, knowledge, and resources to search for data. This results in the newsrooms not being able to improve their coverage and lose revenue as well. She needs easy access to localized data and infographics for her newsrooms. This would provide more in-depth and detailed stories due to the acquisition of new data. In these customer personas, we were able to think like a customer and explain why this product would be beneficial to them. Next, I will be passing it off to Emily to talk about how we can best serve these different audiences.
All right, thanks, Tibet. So now that we've presented with a lot of the research and the problems that we've discovered, both for the AP and for our audience, we want to talk about some of the solutions that we considered for this project. So to start here, this is a quote from a former Data.World customer who canceled their subscription. And they specifically cited the lack of data sets being updated or published to the platform as a reason for why they canceled their subscription, because the data was no longer relevant to the coverage that they were producing. Now, to be clear, this is not a knock on the AP's data team. We consistently heard in our research that customers really trusted the quality of the data sets that were produced by the AP. The AP's team is just small and is also trying to help support the AP's data stories that they produce themselves in addition to this platform. And so there just isn't much bandwidth to be able to produce data for these stories. And so really, in considering our solution, we had to consider these 2 almost juxtaposing needs. For our customers, they needed access to frequent and reliable and relevant data sets. They needed these data sets because they really lacked the time or the knowledge to be able to go out and find data to support their stories themselves. However, with the AP, because they have such a small data team, they needed to be able to produce these data sets efficiently. Additionally, headed into 2024, we're going to be headed into a very busy and consequential election year. And this data team that supports the data sets published on data.world is going to be pushed into helping the AP monitor its election data throughout 2024. And so any solution that we proposed to the AP really needed to not add a lot of lift to the AP's data team while still maximizing the value that customers could get from subscribing to data.world. And so in our solution, we are proposing creating the AP suite of data journalism, which has two prongs to it. The first is the Data Journalism Grant Program. This grant program would offer $5,000 to newsrooms to receive funding to go pursue a data journalism story. In that, they would return a data set that the AP could produce and would receive mentorship and training as being part of a program. These data sets that they would produce would then be uploaded and sold on the data.world platform, where newsrooms could subscribe to the data.world platform to get access to these data sets that are produced by the grant to then use in their own stories. And so let's talk a little bit more about this grant program. Like I said, newsrooms would receive $5,000 to fund a data journalism story. They would also receive biweekly mentorship calls with members of the AP's team to help guide their project, answer any questions they might have, to help fill that gap that we're seeing in knowledge of being able to pursue data journalism stories. What's great about this solution for the AP is that they receive data sets to sell on data.world that don't require a ton of additional work and investment to go out and, make FOIA requests or make Sunshine Law requests to build these data sets. Those are being built by the members of the grant program. Additionally, the members of the grant program would create localized graphics related to their data sets that are produced on Power BI, an AI platform that helps analyze data trends and also create automated graphics that we'll touch on a little bit more in this presentation. But in doing that, the AP is able to help aid that gap in a lack of visualizations within the team, once again, without having to do a ton of lift on their end. And so there are other newsrooms and other organizations in the industry that are running a similar model. Pointer offers their Beat Academy grants. These are grants of $20,000 to help fund climate change reporting. ProPublica offers its local reporting fellowship where they pay the salary and a stipend for benefits for reporters to go pursue investigative journalism stories. What's similar to the ProPublica Fellowship and our model is that while ProPublica distributes grants to local reporters to go pursue investigative stories, ProPublica is receiving the money for those grants from donors. And so the AP would be using a similar model and replicating that. The AP would receive this support through grant funding. We spoke with Brian Pollard, who's a member of the news partnerships team at the AP that helps deal with a lot of the grant funding that they have for projects. The AP has received grants for up to $1.5 million for some of its projects and has received many data journalism grants in the past. So he said that this would certainly be a proposal that would be of interest to funders. The AP typically seats out 3-year grants, so that's what we would suggest, beginning at $100,000 a year, so $300,000 total. These grants would include $80,000 for newsrooms to go pursue those data journalism stories. So the AP would offer 16 $5,000 grants to go produce data sets. It would also include $20,000 for what we're considering administrative fees. That would include costs to market to the program to newsrooms, costs to pay members of the AP staff to help run the fellowship, costs to pay data journalists who would be doing mentorship calls. In our conversation with Brian Pollard, he mentioned just a couple of the foundations who have funded projects for the AP in the past and would be interested in data journalism and helping support local data journalism stories. That includes the Knight Foundation, the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and the Ford Foundation. And so really the AP is uniquely positioned to offer these grants because it has such a long history and relationship of sharing content with its members and helping to uplift the content that its members produce. Because of this extensive history and it already has relationships built with these newsrooms who are pursuing data journalism, it will help the AP facilitate this program more easily than another organization who might want to start a similar data journalism program. And this program, once again, will help increase that frequency on data.world that is so needed because the grant program would be feeding data sets into data.world. When you consider this 2022 shows the number of data sets that were published or updated, that's about 17 here. And when you factor in an additional 16 data sets plus whatever graphics that these data sets may produce, stories may even produce more than one graphic, that's about 100% increase in the number of data sets that are published to the repository that Data.World customers are able to access. And so now that I've touched a bit on the grant program, let's talk about what Data.World subscribers are getting and what they're getting from the data sets that are being fed from these local reporting grants. They're going to get an increase in the number of heavily vetted data sets produced through grant partnerships. Not only would Data.World subscribers get access to the graphics that are produced by the members of the grant program, they would also get access to Power BI themselves at a cost of $10 per user per month to the AP. That would allow these users to instantly create data related to their stories. And now I'm going to pass things over to Anthony Hartnell, who can tell you a little bit more about the Power BI platform.
Thank you so much, Emily. So Microsoft Power BI is a suggestion that we have for the incorporation of artificial intelligence abilities and the creation of data sets rapidly from and graphics from the data sets that are posted directly to Data.World. So in this demo video that's running right now, we're pulling from the actual housing index data set on Data.World, and we're creating graphics from it. So as you can see, it gives you the option to preview the data set, make sure the data is in there how you'd like it. You can then make changes to it. It does take a few moments to load. But within a matter of minutes, I believe this video is under 3 minutes, we're able to create an actual interactive map showcasing this data. And so what we're pulling here is a map of the United States. I'm going to include state data, city data, and then median housing index adjustments. So we can see that on there. We can see whatever the change in median housing data was for the index provided. And so that's what I'm selecting over on the right-hand side. And then it's going to create this interactive map, which I will then extend out and show you how you can hover your mouse over it and interact with it. And so this is created in a matter of moments. You can then go in and do more extensive formatting if you want to adjust it to match the branding for an initial organization. But we did want to show the speed and kind of focus in on it because that was one of the concerns that the AP team raised to us when we were meeting with them in New York. When they were using Power BI a few years ago, it was nowhere near this fast, is my understanding of it. But now they have made it a tremendous number of improvements, and there's a lot that you can do with state level data as well if you would like. There's just a few more complexities to that would need to be taking place. But with a little bit of vetting the data and adjusting, you can include that and create graphics quickly, which will add value, save time, and reduce costs. And so again, we would provide this to the individual newsrooms as well as to the AP team at $10 per user per month for the newsrooms that are using Data.World. And then for anyone who's part of that fellowship program, we'd suggest the $20 per user per month for a few of the additional perks it gives you, but mostly for the extra space in terms of the graphics you can create. It goes up to 100 gigabytes of graphics. So that would be the primary advantage for it. So the primary cost associated with this is really in terms of training. There is a training cost up front that's associated with it. So in terms of getting actual access to basic training, that could take as little as an hour. And so that was kind of what I went through in terms of being able to create what you saw in that video there. So it took me about an hour to kind of figure out some of the basic procedures, to get an intermediate knowledge and really know where everything's located. There are some introductory training videos, and it's through Microsoft, so it's high quality and it's free. Approximately 9 hours of training is what we'd suggest there. So within a workday, if you just devoted yourself to that, you could get to kind of that level. We identified a few advanced functionality modules that we think would be helpful, especially for the AP's data team and some of the users at the newsrooms who are going to be using it more frequently, approximately 17 hours for that. And you could always go for Microsoft certification, which does have a small fee associated with it, but that'd be approximately 4 weeks. And so within that time, I mean, again, that's a lot of time up front, but you could spread that out over the course of a few months or a year if you wanted to, just to get everyone to that level. And so it heightens data literacy and increases the abilities to utilize and manipulate this data directly for everyone involved. And so those are our suggestions for Power BI. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Mike to talk about the financials and pricing strategy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anthony. So we're going to discuss the pricing strategy here and where we're going. Currently, it's a static $450, and as you have seen, that's really not enough revenue to justify investment and move forward with this product. So we're going to go ahead and discuss where we're at now. This is more consistent with the Associated Press's pricing strategy. They go by reach of audience. This is still significantly lower than what the competition would be, and that is very pointed and purposeful. We really do want to attack what the issues are with those customer personas that you saw before, and resources was one of them. We're in a little bit of a data desert right now, and this can really help get it into the hands of the newsroom. So we're going to go ahead and chat about the grant funding now, really get a breakdown of that. So that's going to be $100,000 per year over 3 years. So that's going to break down to the $20,000 of the fellowship and administrative fees, everything that gets this thing running. For the $80,000, that's going to be the reporter funding, which is 16 $5,000 grants. And this will also help increase the number of data sets, which was also an issue from the customer's perspective. So let's go ahead and let's break down the revenue chart. The sales commissions. So how are we going to get this into the hands of individuals? Right now, the sales team does not have a lot of incentive to sell this as they're based off percentage. We want at $100 per subscription to the sales team to get it into the hands, to get that positive word of mouth, and to really see how much we have grown in this product. Right now, as I said, not a lot of incentive, but after this, the sales team is going to have things to sell it on, like Power BI, which is powered by Microsoft in industry-leading technology, as well as the fellowship program. So there's a little bit of a carrot for the sales staff and more information for them to use to sell it. So now we're going to move on here to the long term. So where are we going with this? We really want to use the tiered subscription model, as that will be revenue generating to continue to build the program, as right now there's that soft cap, and we really don't think that this is feasible with that static $450 price point. We also want the fellowship program to foster a data community, which is in line with the values of the Associated Press, and that also is why our pricing strategy is very fair, pretty cheap if you want to be honest, based off conversations we've had with those in New York. So moving on now. A lot of text on this slide, but bottom line here, $8,420 is what we're estimating for 2025. That's not going to blow the roof off for profit. However, we need this profit to show a justification for investment into this program. It's really hard for decision makers to dump $144,000 into something that's non-revenue generating, and this is what we need. We really want 49 license sales. I know that's not a firm 50 per year, but what we did was we tried one per month for the smaller, and then we doubled up. Figured it'd be better to have realistic sales goals rather than pushing a round number into the goal. So that's where we're at with that, and the expenses would be the Data.World fee, fellowship program, Power BI, and sales commission. And now Emily is going to take us home here. Emily?
All right, thanks, Mike. So as far as the timeline goes, the AP really emphasized that they would like a solution that could be implemented as quickly as possible, but that once again didn't require a lot of lift from their existing team and didn't require a ton of investment into revenue before that this program would start generating more profit for them. And so that's really why we went with the grant solution. In our conversation with Brian Pollard, we found out that grants could take anywhere from 3 months to a year to receive on average for the AP. It really depends on how closely that program aligns with the goals of whatever foundation would be funding it. Sometimes they have to go back and forth with funders to determine specifically what that program looks like. So this timeline is taking into consideration the maximum amount of time that it could take to receive that grant, but all of this timeline could certainly be sped up depending on if that grant funding comes in sooner. And so after this presentation, we recommend that the AP begins the process to apply for grant funding. If it takes a year to receive that grant funding, that means that grant funding would be secured by the middle of 2024. Like I said, though, this grant funding could get here as early as October of 2023. It really just depends on the foundation. So in 2024, because they're dealing with such a busy election year and doing such great work in the election year, they would spend the rest of 2024 preparing for the grant fellowship program and recruiting newsrooms for the grant fellowship program. That means this fellowship program and its data sets would launch in 2025. That's also when those additional pricing tiers would launch, because they're adding more value for their customers in 2025. Now, as we mentioned earlier, that Data.World has that soft revenue cap. So ideally, this program is a stopgap to help justify investment away from the Data.World platform to an internal platform on AP Newsroom. Ideally, that would launch in 2026 under this plan. And so to end this presentation here, we really want to emphasize how that this is a great value add all around. For newsrooms who are subscribed to data.world, they're getting access to heavily vetted data sets that they do not have time or the bandwidth or the staff on their news to produce. For newsrooms who are part of the grant program, they're getting funding that they don't have to go out and pursue data journalism stories that are vital to their community. And to the AP is able to create a product that is going to help support their values of supporting and uplifting local newsrooms and raising data literacy at a low price point that is not seen by their other competitors. And so here in this slide, you can see what a data.world platform would look like, including graphics that are produced by Power BI, as you saw, that can be produced in 3 minutes or less. And so we really believe that this proposal will help the AP's mission of supporting local newsrooms. So we really want to thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure to work with the AP on this project. We're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you.
Two questions. One, I'd like to know why you selected the Microsoft data platform as opposed to other products that are similar, like Tableau or Data Wrapper, which might be a little more intuitive. And then the second question is your estimates on subscription renewals and new subscribers. Is that based on gut, or are you basing that on what newsrooms are telling you about their likelihood of upping their subscriptions?
Anthony, if you want to take the Power BI question first.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that? I was having a hard time hearing a little bit on Zoom.
Okay, Anthony, what I'm asking is, why did you choose the Microsoft, the BI, I can't remember the name of it, the BI program, as opposed to Tableau or Data Wrapper or one of the other products that are out there on the market? Was there any reason for that?
Yes, okay, excellent question. So the primary reason is that incorporation of artificial intelligence, and with the initial overview that we showed focusing on speed and the creation of infographics that are directly pulled from data sets, that's kind of the primary need immediately based off the feedback we were receiving from newsrooms. So that's what we showed in that video, and it also addressed that concern that the AP team brought up about the speed of the platform. But really, it's the potential with artificial intelligence trends. So AI is, as I understand it, as it's incorporated with Power BI, will kind of sort data, even if it's not kind of in those clean Excel boundaries. You can pull data directly from websites or from other formats. And even in Excel, if it's not properly delineated or it's not fitting with a particular map type, you still have the freedom to move it around into different formats if you want to. And the artificial intelligence does some of that for you. It also identifies trends. And so that's something we didn't really have time to show in this presentation, but it does have the ability to pull from those data sets and actually show you the data trends as they're moving around. So it's helpful from an internal perspective to the AP team if they want to see some of those things, and even if they wanted to do data mining with some of this data that they have here to kind of try and alleviate some additional work from their data team, they can look at those and identify trends potentially that wouldn't have been seen before, as well as saving them time in that capacity. So it just kind of incorporates a few of those additional things. Tableau, of course, is a great visualization tool. We did investigate looking at Data Wrapper as well, but we felt that this one was the best possible use for meeting this immediate need of creating those graphics quickly and also creating an opportunity for the future with Power BI usage and artificial intelligence that's incorporated in there.
Did you check what were the comparative price points between the Microsoft product and these other, some of the other products on the market?
That's a great question. From a licensing perspective and how it would be set up, I don't believe we were able to get one from Data Wrapper, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think both platforms, from what we were talking to, it was kind of difficult with some of the initial outreach that we did to get in touch with sales teams to get specific figures. I did try a few times to kind of reach out and get set up. but they really wanted some additional information, and they were slow with responding. So we were trying to get specific figures from them, and unfortunately, weren't really able to do that for any of them. That's included with Power BI, so we're going off the reference figures that they've provided. But that seems to be the most friendly if you're going to provide it directly to journalists rather than adopting it as an internal solution, which has more straightforward pricing.
To build off of Anthony's answer there, we did explore, the AP does have an enterprise license right now with Data Wrapper. So we did explore a potential solution where the AP could create a program that connected to Data Wrapper and would instantly generate graphics in the way that Power BI does. But there were a couple issues both with the lift of coding that type of program. That's not something that's built into Power BI as it is right now. And there were also some concerns about the licensing of giving other people and other newsrooms access to the Data Wrapper license that the AP is licensing with right now. So ultimately, that's why we decided to not pursue Data Wrapper and go forward more with Power BI. And to answer your other question, Kathy, about some of the numbers that we've chose here. So the AP currently has about 50 subscribers on its Data.World platform right now. At a maximum, they've had 120. And so under this, we're predicting they're having a pretty big attrition rate right now because that frequency has really dropped off on Data.World. And so under this proposal, they would go up to 74 total licenses, which is a little bit more than what they have right now because we're adding that new value. And this was value that the newsroom said that they would pay for, being able to get access to more data visualizations, being able to get access to more data that they're currently lacking in their newsrooms. That's something that would be worth paying for them, and so that's really where we got those numbers from.
You got some indication from the small newsrooms that 550 is a reasonable amount of money, that they could handle that.
Yes, Kelly, do you want to talk on that a little bit? I know you did some of those interviews.
Yeah, I did get feedback whenever I spoke with them that the 450 price was currently pretty low and very feasible, and we figured that adding the $100 sales commission was the only way we were going to be able to get this in the hands of other newsrooms. And so through interviews, we determined that if we could add that graphics aspect, that would be enough of a value add to justify that additional $100 cost.
And I can chime in a little bit on the sales estimations too. This is honestly conservative. During the COVID pandemic, they had a lot of users, and we really wanted to give a realistic idea of what could be done through sales, which is why we have targeted numbers through the months, higher towards the election. But this wouldn't, after this wouldn't even be how many they had in the past. This is actually going to be lower. However, trying to regain the trust of newsrooms and show that value add. So that's how we got to those numbers.
You have to be smarter than the technology. On your next slide, you were talking about how this would roll out. And in 2025, you mentioned you're going to launch the platform, which is when those companies are going to be doing the work. And you also mentioned that that was the same time you were going to raise the price. Isn't it going to take the grant folks a while to do their work and populate this database for you to have value to add to justify your price increase? Why are you trying to raise the price at the same time people are starting to do the work?
Certainly. So really our idea with the fellowship, and when the AP originally came to us in the scope of this problem, it was specifically focused on improving the Data.World platform, and the fellowship and grant program was an addition that we added as a way to help meet some of the AP's needs to produce data more affordably. And so in terms of that launch in 2025, the AP has really mentioned that they need some kind of revenue here by 2025 in order to launch. And so within that fellowship program, ideally, maybe they would be choosing a couple projects that would be able to launch earlier in the year to produce these data sets. I think that question of the production of data sets would really depend on the scope of the projects that are selected for this grant fellowship. And ideally, the AP would really want to focus on getting at least a couple projects that are able to be executed on relatively quickly to be able to sell on the Data.World platform to justify that price increase.
Okay, and then just one last question. What have you or the AP identified as the biggest risk in effectively outsourcing their work? I'm just curious.
I think one of the risks and things that the AP will need to consider in producing this grant program is making sure that they find projects that are not only going to be relevant to the newsroom who is producing these data sets, but are also relevant to the broader data.world customers that are going to be getting access to the data sets produced for the grant. And so really we would suggest that the AP tries to pursue at least some of those grant projects, if not most of them, maybe are projects that produce a lot of graphics that are able to be used by newsrooms, or are projects that compare Missouri to the rest of the nation, or are focused on areas that they know they have a lot of customers in right now, to make sure that those data sets are again relevant to those newsrooms. That's certainly something that through our research with the AP we've identified as possible, but will need to be something through that screening process that they consider.
Additionally, I would add to that the AP has a very high standard of accuracy, which is why we worked in those bi-monthly meetings with the data journalists to ensure that the way that they are conducting this research and putting together these data sets is in line with how the AP does its own work, and to ensure that the data sets that added are of the same caliber as what's already there. So we feel like that is another consideration that we've looked into.
Thank you.
Do you know if the AP has ever successfully imported a data set from a newsroom partner?
At the moment, the scope of the Data.World project has really been data sets that the AP journalists have produced as part of a reporting story for the AP. So at the moment, they have not done that, but really that would be the goal of those bi-weekly mentorship calls that they would receive, is to understand how that data set is beginning to form and to be able to give guidance on the specific formatting that they need in order to produce those data sets. We do know that in terms of the data sets that are currently on Data.World, the way that they produce those stories is that they go through, they maybe have a big jumbled data set on the back end of the AP that they then know how to format into a relatively easy to use Excel sheet that we showed in that video. And so that would be something as part of those mentorship calls that those AP journalists would help walk the local fellows through.
I would also add with that, though, they do work in collaboration with other groups to produce some of the data sets that already exist. They may not necessarily always be news organizations. They did a project with USA Today, and they also worked with another organization when they produced a massive data set on gun violence. And so they are used to this collaboration idea on their data sets. They have not imported something directly from something that they did not have a hand in. However, they would have a hand in this through those bi-monthly meetings as well.
And also, you mentioned 2024 and elections, be a big election year. Did you guys at all talk about whether the AP's extensive election data could be kind of used as a product?
Yes, certainly. So the AP right now has a platform that they call the election microsite that's already on AP Newsroom. And this election microsite pulls from a back end of all of the AP's election data. It was launched in the 2022 midterms, but they're evaluating it to the point where they're trying to pull from all of their historical election data ever. This is something that they're already selling to newsrooms who are subscribed to their election package. This microsite, you can also pick out a graphic that's automatically generated by the AP and embed it into a newsroom story. And so as far as that internal development platform goes, since that microsite already exists, we are considering that that microsite could then be recreated for other data sets that are involved in this Data.World platform. Unfortunately, we were unable to meet with the development team to understand the specifics of how that site was created and how much of that code could be reused versus rebuilt. But certainly that election microsite is something that the AP is already doing, and we would love to see that election data and the process they're using for election data recreated into some of these other data sets.
Do you foresee a time? One more question. Okay. Do you foresee a time? Does your plan foresee a time when grant money will not be necessary to sustain this project?
Ideally, yes. And so ideally, we would get a 3-year grant at $300,000 for the length of the grant. In our plan, we currently have that grant being renewed one more time. So in total, this program would be grant funded for about 6 years. And really, that's to help justify the investment into an internal AP platform and help get some bridge revenue to raise that pricing tier for that, that audience and that sale of Data.World. Once they've increased their revenue, that would help that revenue that comes from Data.World, that comes from those additional sales, would then help fund the fellowship program and would help transition away from that grant funding.
And to piggyback off that really quick, Data.World has a $30,000 annual fee. The estimated cost to move this to an internal platform is $144,000. So in terms of a long-term plan, this will pay itself off, and you can adjust the prices after that, after you've internalized it and added more features as well. However, we really wanted to stay more firm on the ground and less speculative. That way it's executable once it goes to the Associated Press.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, team. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to switch to our second team, which is Cranes.